So let's get started then.
Okay, on you go.
So first of all, I just wanted to ask, what made you want to go into the film business in the first place, and how did you pursue that avenue?
Well, when I left school, I was doing an apprenticeship to be an electroplater. The idea was to become a plater, a nickel, gold, and what have you. But it was a 5-year apprenticeship, and it was absolute rubbish, so I left.
Right.
And I had, my father was a set decorator in the film industry, and he said, well, try the film industry. And we wrote, and I got an interview, and in I went.
Oh, wow. Was that?
So it wasn't a choice because I wanted to go there. It was a choice of doing something. And of course, I once I got in there, I fell into it deeply.
And was it at Pinewood Studios that you started out? Or
Pinewood, yeah.
Pinewood, yeah.
1954.
Yeah. Were you a member of the Pinewood staff, sort of on there?
Yeah, we were. Everybody was permanent staff in those days, and I was permanent staff, and I was the last assistant director to get fired, and I was probably one of the last people to get fired from Pinewood, and I was made redundant in 1964. So I was there 10 years.
Right.
So I went freelance in 1964.
Yeah. So were they sort of downsizing, restructuring, it sounds like, from...
Yeah, well, the whole industry was becoming freelance. So all the studios, whereas they'd had permanent crew, were dismissing all the permanent crew, and everybody became freelance. As it is today, of course.
Do you have any particular fond memories of those times when you were on the staff at Pinewood, the early years?
Well, we were young lads. We had I started in the mail room and then became a runner. And of course, there was always the girls in the Romeo room to attract one's attention. Yes, I mean, life was much more fun anyway in those days. So I think we had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And of course, but it was quite strict and in the industry, because you had to call everybody sir or madam. You were not allowed to sit down. You had to wear a jacket and tie. And it was quite daunting when, as a young third, I had to go into the restaurant to get actors back on the set. And the whole restaurant will be full, and everybody in their suits and what have you, all smoking their cigars.
Do you recall, does any actor stick out from those early days? Did you ever get starstruck in those days?
Not really. I don't think so. I think the discipline was such that you, as a third assistant, you were not allowed to really get involved with the actors at all. All you would do is be sent by the first assistant to their dressing rooms to knock on the door and say, "Come on set, please."
Right.
But I mean, I did make the effort to see Marilyn Monroe when she was there. So I managed to see her once.
Yeah.
And others. And when I did one of my early films with Lauren Bacall, I had to get her out of bed in the morning at 4 o'clock every morning, and give her a cup of coffee and light her a king-size cigarette and drag her out of bed and put her dressing gown on and let her go to makeup, because we had quite a long drive out to the location. Right. So I suppose that was quite an interesting thing.
Oh yeah, yes, it is. The one thing that when I speak to people that have spent a lot of time at Pinewood, but also other studios, they always say that Pinewood is the best studio to work at. Would you agree with that, Anthony?
Well, in those days or now?
But maybe a comparison might be.
I think, no, I don't think. I think it's where you make it. I think you can. I mean, I've made films everywhere. I mean, I made Goldeneye. We converted a Rolls-Royce factory, which is now Leavesden Studios.
Yeah.
And the next one we converted food storage depot to make the next Bond. I've made films in Prague, in Mexico, in Hong Kong, in France. I mean, you make it everywhere. You adapt.
Yeah. I'm very aware of Leavesden being coming about because of GoldenEye, but less so about Tomorrow Never Dies and shooting outside of Pinewood. What was the reasons that you had to convert the food factory? Was it just Pinewood was booked up?
Well, because by the Pinewood was fully booked, and by the time we came to make a decision, you know, there's a couple of years between bonds very often.
Yeah.
So by the time you make the decision you can't book stages and studio space that far in advance, because and people come in and they've got the money in, they've got to go. So very often we were too late.
Yeah. Was did the food factory become? Is it still a studio, or is it just sort of?
No. I think went back to, I don't know what it is now. No, it's true.
Well, just going to touch on some of your career highlights, if you don't mind. One thing I was quite interested. I know you said before that obviously some things obviously a very long time ago, so you might not recall working on things like the Avengers TV series of Patrick McNee, Secret Agent, known in the UK as Danger Man. What was it like working on TV series versus film?
Well, I didn't do much TV series. I think Avengers, I only did some second unit work.
Yeah.
And Danger Man the same. So I'd done maybe 2 or 3 weeks at a time. It was, the whole pattern was similar. The schedule was probably, you probably shot more screen time in a day because you did less coverage of the scene. It's all very straightforward, I think. But I really haven't done a whole series of television.
Yeah. One of the films that caught my interest was The Great St. Trinian's train robbery with Frankie Howard. Do you have any?
Oh God, you're going back a long way.
Yes.
What did I do on that? Yes, all I did on that was a big second unit, and we shot in an army training base where they had a railroad set up. Remember. It was down in Wiltshire, I think it was. I can't remember. And we did sort of lots of train shots with all the Centurion girls sitting on the top of the train and that sort of thing. That was quite good fun, but I seem to remember we had a very bad weather. Right. And I don't think I was on it that long, 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah. So go on, Anthony.
No. I mean, it wasn't my film. I think I came in to help out.
So having lots of experience as a second unit, first assistant director, did you ever want to become a director? Was that ever on the cards?
Not really, no. I was offered, I did direct some second units, some second unit work. I was offered a couple of times if I could get the money to make a film, they would back me as a director, but I had more interest in production and making it work.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember much about Where Eagles Dare. Is that a film that sort of sticks out in your mind, or?
I mean that was quite a big adventure. I mean that was massive. Some of those stunts we did were really tremendous. Yeah. And doing all the cable car sequence up on there, and it was bloody cold as well, because we had to go up on the cable car sequence. We had to go up in a cable car early in the morning, which would stop at the pylon. We would offload. We'd have an urn of tea and some polystyrene mugs or what have you, and then the they would have to service the ski lift on the top, get all the food and staff up there before it was closed off. Then we'd have to attach our own cable car to the cable car, to the cable. So we would stand up there for 4 or 5 hours before we were ready to shoot. And it was cold, very cold.
Yeah.
And we used to amuse ourselves by making parachutes out of polystyrene cups with camera tape string and serviettes as parachutes. So the countryside is probably littered with those still.
Yeah, I don't think you could get away with it now, could you? I don't
No.
think. I had a question come in. What's been the most memorable filming location while making a Bond movie?
Oh God. Memorable film location on a Bond. I don't know. I mean, they've all got their memories. I don't know. I mean, what we we had tremendous fun in Morocco. Interesting in Russia on Goldeneye, Thailand, India. I suppose India was quite exciting on Octopussy.
Oh yeah.
They all have tremendous. You have fun on some. Well, you have fun days and bad days, obviously.
Oh yeah. Has there been any locations that have been just strategically difficult or just complex or whatever?
Oh yes, there's always. Well, on Casino Royale, getting the construction site was quite a difficult job for me to do. I had, I think, 6 trips to the Bahamas to sort that one out.
Not too bad.
India was quite tricky on some places. Morocco, getting all the equipment from the military, because you had to deal with the king, and you had to go quite high on that respect. Shooting in the streets of San Francisco with the fire engines. Every location has quite there's always a lot of preparatory work beforehand to get permissions.
Yes.
And you don't always necessarily, I think we've always got permission. The only time we ever got turned down was Vietnam. And that was, but we did go back later on, but so we had to move that location to Thailand.
Right.
And I think they're all a challenge, all the locations, because what you're doing is tremendous disruption.
Well, yes. Yeah.
To the town or the city or the local area is tremendous. What you're doing. As all films.
Yeah. Would you say that when you say a name Bond to a location, they do welcome you with open arms, and it's I think the mayor of San Francisco on A View to a Kill, I think, was particularly accommodating. And
yes, Bond opens doors, and I think nowadays most big films open doors because they've got the dollars. But we had, yes, I mean, Bond does open a lot of doors, and we always supported charities wherever we went, which was always helped and that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And employed a lot of local people, of course.
Oh, yeah, very important. You also credited as being on the Great Train Robbery with, of course, a fantastic cast with no less than Sean Connery leading. Do you remember the Great Train Robbery?
Yeah, I mean, the Great Train Robbery, again, we shot all the train stuff on the station in Dublin. And one of my jobs I did on a Saturday was to travel on the train roof. I went on the top of the carriage along the whole route that we were allowed to use. And we made a note of all the bridges, measured them, and all the telephone wires or power lines that went across the track, so that when we shot on the top of the train and we were going at full speed, you knew how to, when you had to shout everybody down, and the number of unit we had on the top of the roof. I mean, health and safety nowadays would have kittens. No one was tied on. We just lay down flat on the roof as you went under the bridges. And but I did that whole research. I've still got, I found it the other day, I've got like a 14-foot, 3 meter, 4 meter long foolscap paper sellotaped together, where I've drawn the diagrams, so I know all the bridges are and the power lines are. And you know, we had Sean Connery up there running along the top, and camera crew and all that sort of stuff, and it was quite hairy. And so that was quite good. And we got what else happened out there? We took over the station, of course, in Dublin. And that was good fun. Good restaurants here.
Oh, wonderful. You mentioned, of course, that it's been a bit of a different world in terms of health and safety, and production's a bit more complex. Would you say that's partly the reason why the gaps between the Bond films get bigger? Because, you know, first of all, of course, they've got to be bigger and better than the previous one, but of course, also filmmaking is just more time-consuming, perhaps, than it was.
No, I think it depends. I mean, obviously, now that we've lost Daniel, Daniel has moved on. It's going to be a while before you create a new Bond, and you have to see what the world is like as well. You know, there might be a new enemy. You know, the next Bond is probably now 2 years away, I would have thought, something like that. And also, Michael and Barbara, the producers, are busy on making other things as well. So you won't go into another Bond that quickly. I should think it'll be a couple of years before it goes into production again.
I think we'd, as fans, we'd rather wait, you know, for a quality product than have it sort of rushed. Definitely. I have to mention, of course, the original Star Wars film. Was that an interesting production at the time? Because obviously a very different type of film. Did it?
Star Wars.
Yes.
Well, Star Wars. Everybody thought it was a load of rubbish, and in fact, it's not a particularly good film. But of course, the young were at that time. I mean, you're going back to '76. There was a growing movement, especially in America, of young people who were beginning to get onto computers and that sort of thing. And they were becoming sort of more tech savvy. I mean, it was still very primitive, but they were becoming more tech savvy. So George Lucas obviously tapped into this, and hence there was that tremendous following for it. And when I saw it first time in the Odeon in Leicester Square in London, and we saw that spaceship come over the top right at the beginning, I mean, the audience just stood up and applauded. Because we hadn't seen that in shooting, because that was a visual effect put in afterwards. And it was very impressive and totally unrealistic, but never mind, it was very impressive.
Yes.
And I mean, the dialogue's a bit corny, but it hit the mark, and it did well. And I didn't work on any of the other ones because I got involved with the Bond, and that sort of took up the rest of my life. But I mean, it was fun. I mean, it was pretty tough working in Tunisia back in the '76. The hotels were primitive. And it was pretty rubbishy, and they were pretty dirty. and we had a member at breakfast. Everybody had boiled eggs because that was the only safe thing to eat. And you could order boiled eggs and you'd get one which was raw, or you could get one that was solid. And I went into the kitchens one morning and I found out that they had a giant cauldron boiling maybe 30, 40 eggs. And when an order came in for boiled eggs, the guy just hooked out 2 or 3. Well, they could have been ones that just been put in, or one's been there for an hour. So, but we had, and it was, the weather was quite cool as well. I mean, it was freezing cold some days and boiling hot other days. And the sand blowing and that sort of stuff. I mean, it was quite difficult work. To you didn't have the luxury. It was quite a small budget film.
Oh yeah, yeah.
In those days, it was quite because no one wanted to make it really, and it had a very limited money. I think I only had 4 weeks prep.
Right.
And I had to go out to Tunisia to help sort out the hotels and everything in that prep time. And I drove all over the place. And of course, in those days, you'd had to, if you wanted to make a phone call back to the UK, you have to sit by a phone for 2 or 3 hours while the operator tried to connect you. And then you maybe got through and said, "Hello, quick," and then you got cut off. So you didn't bother to phone. Before the days of mobile phones.
Oh yeah. So when you got back to Austria, was it a better experience, or would you say because
when you got back to what? Sorry,
when you got back to Austria on Star Wars, was it a bit of a nicer experience, or was there? Because
no, I mean it was interesting. We had some good sets.
Yeah.
To make work. It was. I don't think it was a particularly happy film, but I mean we enjoyed ourselves in our own way, I guess. And making those sets work, and of course the art department were having a terrible trouble because their budget was very tight. So they did a brilliant job. Yeah. And we just went in and shot it.
Because in my research I saw a lovely picture of you on Google Images of you with Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford on the set of Star Wars, and they're in the Stormtrooper.
Oh yes.
I mean, you say it wasn't a particularly happy film. Did that cascade down to the actors as well? Was it a bit of a?
No, I think they had their own life. I mean, between ourselves, there's always humor on the set. And, there's tension and there's humor, and we were there obviously waiting for the lighting to be ready and just had a laugh about something. I don't know what it was. I know I've got the photograph. And
I mean, do you have any particular memories you'd like to share about Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, or Carrie Fisher?
Not really. I mean, they were young and reasonably inexperienced at that time. I know you had to, as a first assistant, I had to probably kick them a bit and shout at them and edge them along, as one does. But no, I think they. I don't know. It's they certainly can't say they were professionals because they weren't in those days. But and it wasn't that type of film. It was all a bit sort of make up a little bit and make do. And it was, I don't know. We sort of, I don't know. We made it work. Very successful, which is great.
Yeah, obviously a great movie. We had just sort of an interesting comment. Just say that obviously you've been involved with sort of, well, three iconic franchises: Star Wars, James Bond, and the Doctor Who '60s movies with Peter Cushing. Are you surprised that these things are still have been so popular and are still in healthy?
Daleks, yes.
Yeah.
I've been invited to attend a screening of both the Daleks films I did next month sometime.
Yeah.
And they do a Q&A there. And I've got them on DVD, and I watched them a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember a thing.
Right.
I just can't remember anything. I mean, they were very tight budget movies, very small budget. And I got on well with the director. Peter Cushing was professional, and they were all professional. We had the odd bit of fun with the Daleks when we threw the smoke bombs to try and get them to run over them, so the Daleks filled up with smoke, and the dancers had to escape out the top. I really can't remember. They were very tight budget movies.
Yeah.
So and you can see that in the films themselves. It had limited sets and but they were fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's
Paid the mortgage.
Oh yes, yes. One question that just came in is asked that you've says that you've been involved in so many different genres of films. So from the sci-fi to action, comedy. Do you have a preferred type of film to work on, or is it all kind of all just very different and fun?
Not really. You try to do your best on every type of film. No, I don't think. I think probably in the latter years, I obviously did bigger films.
Yeah.
In the early days, I did many more smaller films. And in a way, on those smaller films, you have to be more inventive to make it work and hit the schedule and hit the budget. You have much more room to maneuver on a bigger film.
Yeah.
And you also, but of course, you also get much more development time on a bigger film. Whereas on the smaller films, very often you didn't have any development time at all. You just made it work.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, go on, Anthony.
No, I don't. So I don't really have. I think I prefer. I would prefer films with a bit of action and location in, as opposed to a total studio film.
Oh yeah, more variation certainly. One of the films I wanted to mention was Ladyhawke, directed by Richard Donner. Ladyhawke at all?
Yeah, well, sorry.
Do you remember Ladyhawke at all?
Yeah, I mean that was quite an interesting film because we shot in Cinecittà in Rome, and all the locations around Rome, and we only did a 5-day week in the studios, which was quite unusual. So we had the whole weekend off, and we were living there. I was in Rome 6 months on that film, and first of all, it was a Warner Brothers film, and I went out initially to do a recce, and we travelled around in a minibus with Richard Donner, Vittorio Storaro, Luciano Sacripanti, who was the Italian first assistant, the gaffer electrician, myself. I think that was it. And we travelled all around these marvellous medieval towns to find the locations. And of course, the Italian boys, Storaro and Sacripanti, knew the restaurants to go to. So we made sure we hit one of these places every night and had a wonderful meal.
Yeah.
But it was quite a difficult film to make, actually, although it was fun. But because we had the what did we do? We had the Abruzzi, we went up and did the early locations with Leo McCurr. That was quite tough up there. And then, of course, we had the horses and the animals and the wolf and that sort of stuff. And that was quite tricky, but it was, I enjoyed it very much and had great fun in making that film. And it was tough, but and of course having those lovely young actors was a treat because they were really good.
Oh yeah.
But it was, I think we did I think we did a 2-week recce, and then it was probably another month or 6 weeks before the film got the go ahead. So we came home and then went back out to set it all up in Rome.
Would you have encountered writer Tom Mankiewicz on
Who say?
Tom Mankiewicz, the writer?
Probably, I don't remember particularly meeting him, but I must have done somewhere.
Because would you have many encounters on projects with writers, or was it kind of just different?
And you forget.
You don't remember Richard Maybaum at all? From, of course, he did so many of the Bond films.
Well, again, yes, I met Richard several times, but I don't have any. They were just meetings. Involving the script, so I don't remember what they were on or whatever. But
did you find that on the Bond films the scripts would change a lot because of, say, of the location recce's, or? Oh yeah,
you constantly change the script because very often you the scene was there and you go and have a look at it, and the stunt supervisor might say, well, I could, why don't we do this? I can do this. And they agree to that. And you change it. And the Bond scripts, you constantly change as you go through, develop. And, people, the stunt supervisor will have an idea, or the special effects supervisor will have an idea, or I might have an idea or something. And you discuss it, and you develop it, and make it work.
Is there any particular ideas that you contributed to that you're particularly proud of, or was it kind of sort of an amalgamation of different people?
Oh God, I probably contributed much on all the films. I mean, I suppose. I mean, maybe the construction site sequence in the Bahamas I contributed a lot to, because I had to get that permission to shoot on that construction site, which was in the middle of a military base. So we had to get permission from the government and that sort of stuff. I think one just, you stand on a location with the director and the cameraman and the stunt coordinator and the special effects guy and all that sort of stuff. And you all chat amongst yourselves and you mention something and say, wouldn't it be, why can't we do this? And someone say, no, that's rubbish. Why don't we? Then they add to it, and then you add a little bit, and ideas form. So you all contribute to the success of a particular stunt or action sequence.
Oh yeah. So how did you become involved with the world of Bond in the first place?
For Your Eyes Only was my first Bond in 1980. And I think it's probably because there was an associate producer called Tom Pevsner. And I worked with Tom on 2 or 3 films, and we got on very well. And he got offered For Your Eyes Only as the line producer or associate producer, whatever he was at that time. And he suggested me as the first assistant to John Glenn. So I met John Glenn and I met Covey, and I got taken on.
Oh, well, wonderful. Do you remember much about Cubby Broccoli? What was he like as a person?
Oh, it's wonderful. Wonderful guy. Very, very human. Would come on the set in the morning and talk to everybody as he came on. And he would be very, if you knew there was a problem, like someone had lost their partner or something like that, he would go and have a word with them. And he was very generous, and he was very tough, but he knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Do you have any particular fond memories of Your Eyes Only? I suppose being your first, it might be quite special.
Do I have any memories of For Your Eyes Only? God, where did we go?
Corfu and
Corfu, Greece.
Yeah.
And Cortina in Italy. We did the snow sequence up there. What do I think? Try to think. Yeah, Corfu was okay. Greece was a tricky one because in Meteora, the monks wouldn't let us film the monastery.
Yes.
And that was quite a tricky number. And I remember flying from Corfu to Greece in a Greek military helicopter. There's about 15 of us in this bloody thing, and it rattled. It had gaps in the doors. It was pretty horrendous, and they made us wear life jackets. So I thought, yes, well, they're not much good, but it was probably a 2-hour flight, and but quite useful. What else? I can't remember. It's hard to remember individual things. You have to study each film to get able to answer these questions.
Yeah.
I remember there was a very big. One of the things that we always laugh about is there was, I think it was the special effects supervisor. It was his birthday, and he threw a party, and we had a massive party. I had like 200 people turn up and all bought bottles, and it went on all night, on the rest day night, of course. And we still talk about it because it was a great evening, and we were all, of course, a bit younger then.
Yeah.
But what else was? I think it went quite well. We stuck on schedule. I think not much I can remember about For Your Eyes Only. I can remember individual locations, but that's not much really.
I mean, what was did you find India interesting on Octopus? It was
India.
Yeah.
Oh, I love India. India is wonderful. What do we do there? We went down to Udaipur to shoot on the lake there.
Yeah.
Yes, that was quite interesting, because it's a very, very different culture to work in.
Yeah.
And the lake was quite not the most. You didn't want to fall in the lake. That was but I remember one of the things when I went out on a recce, and I brought back samples of the water from the hotel.
Right.
The water that they gave you in the room in the carafe, the water from the tap, and the water from the lake. I had 3 bottles I brought back, and we sent them to a laboratory. And the feces in the water, the hotel carafe water, had the most human feces in, and it was terrible. And we had to laugh because in those days you didn't have the bottled water that you have nowadays.
No.
And so we had to make sure we sort of had boiled water and what have you. It was quite interesting. The boat I don't know if you remember the film at all, but the
Oh,
boat
yeah.
that the Octopussy girls rowed, we found that stuck in the mud, and the art department renovated it, and I had the pleasure of taking all those girls out on the lake and teaching them to row in sync. And interestingly, yeah. 2 weekends ago, I did a charity event up in Coventry for the breast cancer, Maggie's breast cancer. And 2 of the girls there were from Octopussy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That was wonderful to see them again after all this time. And so that was quite interesting. But it was, nowadays, if you go to Udaipur now, the film is showing in the local cinemas non-stop. It's running continuously.
Yeah. After all these years, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
I've been back now to India several times. And no, I like it very much. It's a country I love.
Yeah, it's a fascinating place. It's one that's high on my list to go to. Well, one interesting duty you performed on A View to a Kill was you went, I think, to San Francisco as pre-production to film the Fuji blimp, I believe. Was you doing that?
We went on a recce, 4 or 5 of us, to view the locations and choose the locations. And while we were there, it was a Sunday, I think, and while we were there, we were standing out on the banks by the Golden Gate Bridge, and a balloon airship came along and was floating around. I can't remember what it was for now. It might have been a photographic company advert.
Yeah, I think it was Fuji cameras, I think.
Fuji, all right. And someone said, God, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could get a shot of that? And Tom Pevsner, who was the associate producer, somehow went to a camera house. I think we had someone with us, American production manager with us, who had a contact, and they got a camera house opened, and we got a camera. I think it was a Wild Array or something like that, and we set it up. I pulled focus, and we got shots of the airship coming towards the bridge, and I think we might have used a couple in the film.
I think there is a couple of shots.
I think there's a couple of those long shots we used in the film. Yeah.
So San Francisco was quite a pleasant place to film, I take it.
Yes, because we had a lot of night work there, so that was quite tricksy, and the fire engines racing through the street and that sort of thing was a lot of organisation. Yeah, a lot of organisation.
I mean, I think it's one of my favourite films, but I know it got a lot of criticism at the time of just being perhaps a bit darker and a bit more violent than some of the previous Roger Moore films. Did you feel that at the time? Were you aware of the criticism?
Doesn't really bother me. I mean, I can't do anything about it. We just make the film, and I didn't think it was too dark and too violent, but then there's always someone going to criticise.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any memories of Roger Moore on any of those films as a?
Oh yeah, I mean, Roger was great fun. Oh, great fun, and no, my wife and I had dinner with him several times, on location, and he told good stories, and he was entertaining to be with, but he was also an interesting man. I mean, you could talk with him.
Yeah.
He was professional, and he. He was pleasant to work with. I didn't find any problems with him.
And how about Timothy Dalton? Always regarded as a much more serious actor. Did you find that?
Tim was fine. Yes, we used to have dinner with him several times, especially in Mexico. when we were up there for 9 months.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that was you know, you live in a hotel for 9 months, you become you need something to do.
Yeah, yes, that's right. I mean, were you quite shocked after License to Kill that there was that 6-year gap and there was so much problems?
Well, it was yes. I mean, it hit a bad time in the film industry as well. It wasn't just that. Things were very bad for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't. I think I made 2 or 3 very small films in 2 or 3 years. It was quite bad.
Yeah.
Quite bad for everybody, financially.
Oh yeah, yeah. And of course, if you talk about other issues, Quantum of Solace with the writers' strike, and that must have been quite problematic for all concerned.
Yes, that we had a few problems with that. I remember. Quite can't remember how we got around that. I can't remember now. I think we had the script. I don't think we had to worry about writing anymore.
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah, and I mean, I got the sense from seeing documentaries that although they had a script, they would probably have liked it to be in a bit more polished.
Yes, we couldn't. If I remember, we couldn't adapt the script that we had. You had to stick with that. No, I think the strike ended during the production.
Yeah, yeah.
I think. I think there's. I can't remember exactly now, but I think we were able to amend the script later in production.
Yeah. Do you know if Michael Wilson had any hand in that? Because of course he had co-written quite a few of the.
He always had a hand in it.
Always had a hand, yeah.
He'd have a dabble.
But I imagine, of course, the writer's strike would have affected him as well, so he would have had to be.
Oh yes, affected everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I heard at one point even Daniel Craig was coming up with ideas, and I think he said that he wasn't a writer, but I think he was trying to everyone was trying to sort of pitch in. Is it one of those films that you were quite happy with?
Which ones?
Quantum of Solace. Do you think it turned out okay?
It was my last. Well, no, it wasn't actually my last film, but it was my last full film. Yeah, I didn't think it was one of the best.
No.
But it was. I mean, I had a lot of fun. I set up the aerial unit to shoot in Mexico with all that aerial sequence. We shot out there for 3 weeks. That was quite hairy. And then because of all the Italian shoot and that sort of stuff, it was quite a busy movie.
Oh yeah. I think it turned out pretty well. I think it's just that you've got the others are so fantastically good. It perhaps get a bit lost because of not anything by itself, but just the.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hit top marks on everything.
Oh no, there's always complexities, isn't there, that will happen. Do you have any particular memories that stick out from the Pierce Brosnan era of Bonds? I think you mentioned GoldenEye being quite a good one.
Well, GoldenEye was, of course, the first film after the long break, and we also had to set up the studios in Leavesden.
Yeah,
because it was a factory, and we had to convert it into a studios. And I sat out there every day with sandwiches and didn't even have a chair. We just sat on the floor at lunch till we got it all working and got a telephone system put in and offices to suit us and stages. We had to clad all the stages with soundproofing and that sort of stuff. It took quite a while. Yeah. That was a fun film to work on because we had was the Puerto Rico shoot up on the Arecibo dishes. That was on those giant dishes. I mean, that was amazing. They were going up there. They were fantastic. Where else did we go? Russia, of course.
Yeah.
With the tanks, and then we actually pulled that sequence out of Russia and built that set on the back lot of Pinewood, at Leavesden, out on the runway.
Yeah.
And because there was a runway at Leavesden at the time, which I've actually taken off from, but now it's all built over by Warner Brothers. So that was quite a massive set that we built out there on the back lot. Russia. Where else did we go? Puerto Rico.
France. So, Monte Carlo. Did you go to?
Oh yes, Monte Carlo. Well, that's always fun. Yes, and then up to a village called Perisud, up in the hills. It's a skiing village up in the hills there above Monte Carlo.
Yeah,
I can't remember what we did up there, but that was but Russia was quite an event. That was quite tricky, because back in, what year was that? That was
94, 95.
94, 95. I mean, Russia was pretty primitive in those days, and it was a strange, very strange times, because it was difficult to work and you had to be very careful, and because Bond had been a bit anti-Russian in its day. No, it was quite good fun.
Well, was it ever the intention to do all the tank chase in Russia, or was it always going to be a split between that and the?
It was always going to be a split between the two, and we got some good establishing shots in Russia. Whether an audience would know the difference or not, but you couldn't do that in the studios, get some of those shots. Whereas the closer street stuff and the stunt work was much easier to do in the studios. We did, because I remember the shot where the Jeep comes through the archway and hits the fence work and goes and tips the guys over into the canal. What we did there was the archway was quite big, so we built it smaller. So the art department made it smaller with plaster work or what have you, and some local dignitary thought that we destroyed the arch, and so that took a bit of peacemaking.
Die Another Day was a very fun Bond film with Iceland, going to Iceland and various other locations. Did you any memories of Iceland or that kind of, or the stuff involved?
Iceland. Yes, we had the problem there where the lake that we wanted to shoot on started to freeze and then started to thaw. So we had to find, we started looking for another location. Well, it's very difficult to find something. And we went up to Canada, 5 of us. I took Vic Armstrong and 2 or 3 others. Where did we go? I can't remember now. We flew into, oh God, I can't remember. When we flew out to this lake. Well, we didn't fly. We flew up there and we went out to the lake, and we were taken out by a train that carried logs, and we went out on that, and then we had to get on skidoos and go into this lake. And the access, it was frozen solidly, but it was in a nature reserve, so the restrictions were enormous, and the access was difficult. And thank goodness the lake in Iceland started to freeze again. And of course, we needed like 10 or 12 centimeters of ice to be able to take the cars and the weight of everything. But even so, when you went on the ice, we all had to wear these survival suits, in case you went in case the ice went through and you went in, and they were incredibly uncomfortable, unpleasant things. So we didn't spend much time out there. or avoided the time out there. But it was, I think we shot twice on that lake now, and but it was quite. I mean, Iceland's a fantastic country, and the locations are tremendous, and we had tremendous cooperation from up there, from the local production company and whatever, and to get all the facilities up there, you know, ship everything up, what you needed, the trucks and the equipment is quite a logistics issue to do it.
Yeah.
And but all worked well. We smashed a few cars up.
Yeah. I have a question come in. You've had obviously many different roles on the Bond films. I think line producer, associate producer, executive producer. Do you have a favorite production supervisor? Do you have a favorite of those roles?
Well, as a first assistant, which is a fabulous job, I was how many years as a first? Oh, I was probably 20 years or more as a first assistant. And that's a brilliant job. I think it's the best job in the film industry, and I really enjoyed that. And then people started putting pressure on me, saying, "No, you're getting too old to be a first. You've got to move into the office." And I moved into the office. The joy of being an executive producer, which I finished up with, is that you get to set up the movie right from the beginning. You start 6 months before the movie, and when there's only 3 or 4 of you on payroll, and you get to find the locations and sort them out. Like I said about the construction site in the Bahamas. Your thoughts change, the things change, because as a first, you control and run the movie on the set.
Yeah.
But as a production executive producer or something like that, you prepare the movie much in advance. So the first takes over to shoot it. So there's different, they're both enjoyable. You get great feeling of pride to actually make it work, to get the success, to make the location work. Then, of course, the crew go in and make it work as a film.
Yeah, yeah. You said that the script is constantly evolving. Does a Bond stick in your mind of being the one that changed most dramatically from the concept to finish? I know Tomorrow Never Dies had an awful lot of rewrites. Do you any bells?
Well, obviously, from the first Bond that I did to the last Bond, the world is changing all the time, and ways of life is changing, and perhaps people would be entertained, audiences would be entertained with more simple things like the early Bond films, and they needed more sophistication in later life, in later films. And I think that Bond's developed in that respect.
My penultimate question is regarding Daniel Craig, because he's been credited as a producer on the last 2 Bond films, and I get a sense he's always been very much involved in the making of the film. What was that your experience on the 3 that you did with Daniel Craig?
Well, they all have an input, and as I said earlier, the sequences, you all stand around, or maybe you're on a location, you have a look at it, and someone says, "Wouldn't it be better if we came in from that side? We could do this." And someone says, "Oh no, but if we did this and then." And everybody has an input, and Daniel would have some input, and maybe the director would say, "No, that's rubbish," or incorporate a little bit of it. And it's teamwork. It all works together, and you bounce off other people's ideas.
Yeah. Did you ever have a location where you just couldn't wait to leave for whatever reason?
Oh, probably. Offhand, what? I've had some pretty nasty places in India I could do without.
Yeah.
Tunisia. Yes, I had a very unpleasant experience out there. We lived on tuna fish sandwiches for 3 weeks. That was terrible. Where else? God, I've worked in something like 45 countries. I mean, it's hard to remember. You make the most of the time. You make the best of it, and you know, you find a decent restaurant. You can go and have a decent meal, or you know, there's always something to do, and you sort of sink into the local way of life, really.
Yeah, certainly the food is obviously very important.
I can't think. Mexico was pretty boring because we were there 9 months.
Yeah,
and you know, you live in the center of Mexico. It was all right. There were some decent restaurants, but it was not the most pleasant place to live in.
If there was one location you could recommend to me and the audience, but you must go to, what would it be?
Oh God. Well, of course, Hong Kong used to be wonderful. I wouldn't recommend that now. India's got fabulous places to go to. Morocco's got tremendous places to go to, and beautiful out in those deserts and mountains. Every country has something to offer of beauty. It depends where you go. I mean, if you went to New Orleans, you'd have a lot of fun and you'd go gambling. If you go to India, you sink into the local culture. And Europe has become a little bit boring, I think. But I mean, even so, each city, Amsterdam, Hamburg, Berlin, Paris, Rome, Florence, they've all got tremendous things to do and see, and entertainment and food and wine. I mean, everywhere has benefits.
Yeah.
If there's somewhere where you're awful, where would I say? I don't know. It's hard to. It's hard to say. I can't. I could probably think, if I think about it when we finish. But it's you make the best of it. I mean, I've had some really nasty locations, and you just make the best of it, and you know, because it doesn't last forever.
No.
You know, it's probably only a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that, and they lose your laundry and you get food poisoning and all sort of stuff. But it doesn't last.
No. I suppose it's like the worst holidays you've been on. There's always still been something nice to get out of it, and something horrible. And my last question, Anthony, I was just wondering what your favourite project in your career has been, and why.
Probably my best films, the most enjoyable films I've really enjoyed, was Julia, with Fred Zinnemann directing, Jane Fonda starring, Vanessa Redgrave. Elephant Man.
Oh yeah.
Was an absolute pleasure because of the superb cast in that and the acting in front of you. And Marat Sard, a thing I did with the Royal Shakespeare Company,
right?
Which was absolutely mad, but it was absolutely wonderful to be in the middle of that lot. I can't even remember the full title of it. I'll read it out to you. I've got it written down here, I think. I'll read it out. It's, if I can find it, Marriage Side. Yeah, the full title, and this was directed by Peter Brooks, and it starred Patrick McGee and Glenda Jackson, and it's called The Persecution and Assassination of Jean-Paul Marat, as performed by the inmates of the Asylum of Charenton under the direction of the Marquis de Sade. And it was an absolute three-week shoot, and it was a nightmare. But it was fun. So Julia, Elephant Man, Marat Sade, probably because just watching those performances in front of you with a director who knew what he was doing, it was just a joy to go to work. Joy to go to work.
Yeah. Well, I'll be unfortunately coming to the end of our hour, and I feel like we've just sort of started to scratch the surface. But it's been a really wonderful conversation with you, Anthony, and I want to thank you on behalf of myself.
Yeah. Well, I apologise that I can't remember, but I mean, I did 75 movies and 45 odd countries, and it's hard to remember.
Oh, no, I think you shared some wonderful memories, and as a die-hard film fan and a Bond fan, there's stuff I've never heard before, which is always nice.
Well, I try not to give too much away.
Oh yeah. Are you going to be doing a book or anything like that, or
well,
maybe?
Yes, I am, but it's a winter job, and I've got up to Casino Royale.
Oh, lovely.
Fortunately, I've kept a diary since 1967, a daily diary, so I can refer to that. But I don't know. It's maybe I just do Bond. Maybe I do a quick synopsis to all the other films as well. And but how much can you remember? As I said earlier about the Daleks, I've watched both films, and I can't remember. The only thing I can remember about the Daleks films, we had a lovely stunt man called Eddie Powell, and he was playing a part. And he was supposed to be shot by a Dalek, fall off the top of a roof through an awning onto the floor. He did the stunt, and he broke his ankle.
Oh.
So we sent him to the hospital, got him plastered up, brought him back, and did the close-up. But, unfortunately, he's now passed away, but he was also Clint Eastwood's stunt double on Where He Was There.
Oh, right. Yeah.
There we go. All right.
Well, thank you very much. I wish you good luck with the book and the BFI event for Doctor Who. I hope that goes well. And it was lovely talking to you, Anthony.
Yes. I mean, what I'm going to say about two films when I can't remember anything in front of an audience, I do not know. There we go. All right, Phil. Take care now.
Thanks so much. Low talk to you. Goodbye.
Bye now.
Bye.